What is up again, everybody? I'm Clayton. Welcome back to Ages of Film. And today we've got Superman 2 up the bat. But before we get into this review, while you're here, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and join the pack. Get in on all the fun. It helps the channel out. And just a friendly reminder, as always, guys, this is just my opinion on this movie. There's no need to be upset or offended by anything I have to say. It's just my opinion. Let me know your opinion of this movie in the comments section. All I ask that you be respectful about it. That being said, let's get rocking. So, Superman 2 originally released in 1980. So, okay, here's the thing. There are two different cuts of this film, two different versions of this film. There's the Richard Lester cut, which is kind of the standard cut and version that most people are familiar with. It was the one that was released in theaters. It was the one that you could purchase on VHS and then eventually on DVD for many, many years. It's kind of the definitive version. However, in 2006, they released a Richard Donner cut of Superman 2. For anyone who doesn't know, Richard Donner was the director of the first Superman movie and was actually shooting Superman 2. He had already shot about 80% of Superman 2 while they were making the first Superman movie. Long story short, he had a fallout with the studios. He was dropped from director, and they brought on Richard Lester to finish out the film. The problem, though, was at that time in Hollywood, in order to receive a director credit on the movie, you had to have shot, I think it was about 40% of the movie. So Richard Lester had to go in and just do a bunch of reshoots. They cut a lot of Richard Donner's work, a bunch of his scenes, a bunch of the stuff that he had done. They replaced it with Richard Lester's it, shots and basically slapped his name onto the title and made it Richard Lester's Superman 2. So a bunch of stuff was cut out, things were replaced. It didn't turn out all that great. Now, as a kid, the Richard Lester cut was the only cut I knew of this movie. And I thought, the Superman 2 as a kid is a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed this movie. Once I saw the Richard Donner cut eventually, I never really looked back. I always just watched Richard Donner's Superman 2 whenever I wanted to watch this movie. So I say all that to say the Richard Donner cut of this movie is the cut I will be reviewing in this video. So I'm not going to be reviewing the standard Richard Lester cut. I've chosen to review the Richard Donner cut since he was the original director of this film, since he did shoot most of this film, and since it was his original vision and idea for Superman 2. That's the cut I'm going to be reviewing. So if you guys think that the Richard Lester cut is better, let me know in the comment section. Which cut of this film do you prefer? The standard theatrical Richard Lester cut or the Richard Donner cut? I had to choose one of them. I chose the Richard Donner cut. That's the one I'm going to be reviewing. So just to throw that out there in case you're wondering. All right, so let's get into my positives and negatives as always, starting with the positives and then moving into the negatives. There are carryovers from the first Superman movie into this one that I do like. So getting into the positives now, obviously one of the biggest positives for me is the same as the first film, and that is Christopher Reeve as Superman. I love Christopher Reeve as Superman. He will always be my definitive Superman. He's who I think of when I think of Superman. A large part of that is nostalgia, growing up with him as Superman, seeing him always on screen when I was watching Superman movies. He's who I think of, right? But I also think he played the part the best. He played Clark very well and he played Superman very well. And he made those two characters different from each other. I thought he gave a brilliant performance in both the first one and in Superman 2. I think he does a really great job. So he, again, is a standout for me. He's one of my favorite things about these early Superman movies. I think he does a just a terrific job in this one as well. Really, a number of the performances, all the main cast here do a great job. Gene Hackman comes back as Lex Luthor. R.I.P. to Gene. So sad what happened to him, but yeah, he's great as Luthor. Has a bunch of great kind of lines in this film that he delivers just with subtle humor. It feels natural. It doesn't feel, it's like it's not at the expense of the character. It feels natural. It still works. It still holds up. It still gets a kind of a chuckle out of me when I hear certain lines. And I love seeing Gene Hackman. Just you could tell he's giving it his all. You know, like he's really leaning into this character and making it his own. And you know, he is, again, he is my Lex Luthor. All due respect to Jesse Eisenberg, but to me, Luthor on screen is Gene Hackman. So yeah, he does great in this one. Terrence Stamp plays General Zod. I thought he does a great job as Zod in this movie. He has that kind of general type of heroic presence to him, the way he carries himself, very stoic presence, very powerful presence. He embodies that character very well. You know, if you know the character of General Zod, he takes great pride in being a general. And you know, you would naturally carry yourself a certain way if you were a general, you know. And I felt like Terrence did a really good job in his performance, in his body language at embodying General Zod. And I thought he does a really great job in this one as well. Margaret Kidder coming back to play Lois Lane. Again, great job. Her and Christopher Reeve still bring that chemistry together. I thought they have that, and this was the same thing with the first one. They just had a very organic, natural chemistry together on screen. That was very believable, very genuine. I buy into it. I believe it. It's very, it comes across very natural, and just great chemistry with those two. And Kidder does, you know, just a fine job as Lois Lane. So all the characters here, all the main characters are positives, and characters are a big thing in film. To me, character are the most important piece to any film. They are the characters. I've said it many times on my channel. I'll say it again until I'm blue in the face. Characters are the ones telling the story. You need great characters to invest in your story. If the characters don't work, the story can still work if it's executed right, but you're missing a big piece of that. And in my opinion, I don't know that of a single film that I've given 5 stars to that didn't have great characters, didn't have characters that I love. So to me, characters are the most important piece to a great film. It's not the only, you know, it's not the only component that makes a great film. You know, you need story, you need an emotional connection to the film, you need good quality execution. All that stuff matters, but the most important piece is the characters. And I think that both the first Superman and Superman 2 have great characters with really good performances by the actors who you can tell are giving it their all. They're trying to make a really good movie. And that's something that I enjoy when I watch this film. Another big positive for me, again, is the score by John Williams. Just it's such an iconic score that still holds up. It still gets me going. Still amps me up. I love that Superman score by John Williams. Kind of changes it up a little bit here. You can tell it's not the exact same score from the first one. He kind of adds some nuances in there to make it pop and make it stand out a little bit, but still a great score that enhances the experience for me with Superman 2. The pacing is really good. I think this movie moves along really well. I don't think it overstays its welcome. It kind of gets in, gets out, does its thing, and you know, is and part of that is because I'm invested. I'm invested with these characters. I'm invested with the story. I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a good time. I'm being entertained. So it makes the pacing move along really well. The third act is really good. Everything from once Superman confronts Zod everything from that point on is just a blast. It's thoroughly entertaining. And I've always loved that third act of the film. There's a few things that I'll address in the negatives that I have with the third act, but by and large, that third act, great stuff, man. Really enjoy all that stuff. And then I do definitely I appreciate the story in the Richard Donner cut more than in the Lester cut. I think they land and they connect on the story beats better. I think they execute it better in the Richard Donner cut. That being the story being really about consequences to your actions and responsibilities that one has to face, and also sacrifice. You have Superman sacrificing himself, basically giving up his powers in order to be with the person that he loves. You have, Jarrell basically sacrificing what's left of himself in order to bring his son Jarrell back. So sacrifice is one of the themes that is kind of explored here. You also have consequences to your actions, and Clark has to face the consequences of giving up his power, and he has to, see what it's like to walk in the shoes of an ordinary person. And he feels pain for the first time. And that bar scene when he gets beat up by that bully, Clark's never felt physical pain like that before. So he feels pain, he feels hurt, he's limited now in what he can do. And so he has to face the consequences of his actions and of the decisions that he willingly chooses to make, and then the responsibilities of what, with power comes great responsibility, right? And they explore that too, and what Superman is obligated to do with the power that he has, so to speak. So I think that they execute those story beats better in the Donner cut. They explore them a little bit more. They touch on them a little bit more, and make it a little bit more poetic throughout the film. So those are all positives for me, and I do like. I did like the ending up to where Superman says goodbye to Lois and then flies off. Up to there, I think it works. Uh, and I think they should have ended it there, to be honest. And that kind of leads into the negatives now. So now I'm getting into the negatives. One of the negatives being, again, the ending here, like the reversing time. Now, the whole reverse time to save Lois or whatever, that was originally supposed to be the end of Superman 2. They put it in Superman 1, established that Superman can do that in these, feature film version of this character. And it kind of diminishes the threat. And I mentioned that in my review of the first Superman movie. And we see that take place again here, is that he just reverses time to undo everything that's been done. And to me, it takes me out, because there's nothing, there's no real significant threat level when you do that, because any threat, any challenge that might overtake you, when you have the ability to reverse time, it nothing really matters. There's really no ultimate price that you can pay when you can just undo what's been done. You know what I mean? So I wasn't a fan that they did that here, and it wasn't needed. The thing is, Superman defeated Zod and his little henchmen. Their powers had been stripped from them, so they were powerless. They kind of, I guess, died in the Fortress of Solitude there. And Lois, he could trust Lois to keep his secret. He tells her that he knows he can trust her to keep his secret. So it poses the question, why reverse time to begin with? Like, why do that when you didn't need to? It doesn't change. Like, it changes a lot, but it wasn't needed, because now it actually, we're rewinded back to the point where, towards the end of Superman 1, and now Zod and his little henchmen are back in the Phantom Zone. Well, what does that mean? It could mean that they could be released again if something happens, and then Superman would have to fight him again. But the way that his confrontation with Zod ends, he defeats Zod soundedly. So there's no need in reversing that victory. It was a sound victory. Zod's been stripped from his powers. There's no need to rewind and put him back in the Phantom Zone. He was put in the Phantom Zone for a number of reasons, one of which that he wouldn't harm humanity. He wouldn't harm Krypton. He wouldn't be able to harm anybody. But he can't harm anybody anyways when his powers have been stripped. So there was no need to do the whole time reversal thing again. It also kind of tells us that you don't really trust Lois to keep your secret, because if you did, there would be no need to rewind time like that. So just that whole ending there, that part of the ending wasn't needed. You could have just ended it with him saying goodbye to Lois, flying off. I did like the bar scene where he comes back to get some payback on that bully. I don't mind seeing that. End it there. You didn't need to do the whole time reversal thing again in this film. So that's kind of a big negative for me. I must say. Also, the opening sequence as well, like recapping from the first one. I didn't really. I'm typically not a fan of that. Like where people that coming to Superman 2 probably saw Superman 1, So there's no need to recap what happened when we've already seen the movie. We know what happened in the first one. You don't have to spend 5-10 minutes showing us what we already know happened. Just get to the story. So I wasn't really a fan of having them, doing the whole recap thing. And then, with the missile that Luthor launches in the first one, having that be what hits the Phantom Zone, frees Zod and his henchmen again is kind of weak, because what are the chances? It's very coincidental. Like, you're telling me that the Phantom Zone just happened to be floating across space at the exact time that Luthor's missile was launched into space. Like, how big is the galaxy that Krypton was in? And the Phantom Zone had just, by coincidence, happened to go right in front of the missile at that same time. It's a big ask. And then the dialogue, by Zod just flying out, just going free, kind of cheesy, right? So the whole opening sequence, the recapping part wasn't really needed. And then I just felt like there's a better way to get Zod out of the Phantom Zone. That's one thing I do think Man of Steel does better at, is explaining that. Here it was kind of weak. The missile hits the Phantom Zone, that's what frees them. So that's kind of messy. Most of my issues with Superman 2 are in the script department. There's a number of plot holes. I'm not going to get into every single one of them for time's sake, but there's a number of conveniences and plot holes in this film. It's still kind of messy. The editing, you can tell, because Richard Donner didn't get to actually film the whole thing from start to finish. You can tell that and it was having to be scrapped from, scenes and shots that had been locked away in a vault for decades. The editing is still kind of messy. You can tell it's not, if you have a keen eye, you know what to look for. You understand film editing. It's not very well edited, understandably, but it's still one of the things that affects my viewing experience a little bit. But just getting into a couple of the plot holes here that do bring the film down some. One of them is why Superman needed to give up his powers in the first place. We're never really given a reason. The reason that they attempt to say is that he wants to be with Lois Lane, so he's willing to become just a normal human so that he could be with a woman he loves. The problem with that, and the reason that's a plot hole, is because it wasn't needed. He had already been kind of dating Lois, no problem. Like, with Batman, there's a reason why he can't be dating Rachel in the Dark Knight trilogy. There's a reason why he can't be dating Rachel as Batman. There's a reason there. Superman, there's not really a reason. Like, why does he need to give up being Superman to be with Lois? They had already been kind of having their thing, and no harm was coming from that. No one knows about Clark Kent. The only people that know of Clark Kent are the people that work at the Daily Planet. That's it. And none of them are going to connect the pieces with him and Superman. No one really pays attention to Clark other than Lois and, Jimmy Olsen and obviously their boss. But um, it's not like anyone's going to figure out who he is, and it's not like Lois is going to be in any danger, uh, or Superman's not going to be in any danger either because nothing can really hurt Superman. Like, yes, Luthor had kryptonite, but at the start of Superman 2, Lex Luthor is locked away. So why does Superman in Superman 2 need to give up his powers in order to be with Lois? To me, that makes no sense. No harm is coming to y'all's relationship. Nothing is being affected that would require you to have to give up being Superman in order to be with Lois. When you can literally fly faster than the speed of light and faster than the speed of time, you can still spend as much time as you want with Lois when you can move that fast. So to me, it the reason was kind of weak, and it still left a great deal of ambiguity there that was never really resolved. To me, it just that's a plot hole because the things that come after that all could have been avoided had Clark not given up his powers. Like, needing Jarrell to give the last of his energy to bring, to bring the powers back into Clark. All of that could have been avoided if Clark just hadn't given up his power in the first place. That was very naive and just really unnecessary. Like you didn't need that. If you're going to go that route, give us an actual legitimate reason why Superman would have to give up being Superman in order to be with Lois. And we're not really given a rational, logical reason there. So for me, that's something that I always kind of wrestle with the film. Also, what was Luther's plan with Zod and Superman? Luther's supposed to be, if you know the character from the comics, this is one of the greatest minds in the DC universe, like one of the most brilliant genius minds in all of comics, not just DC, in all of comics. Luthor is incredibly, incredibly intelligent. We see a glimpse of that in the first Superman movie. We kind of see how smart and how brilliant this guy is. And Superman 2, he's kind of seems like an idiot. Like even his own escape was at the hands of uh the girl, Stetmeyer or whatever her name is. Like he really didn't even stage his own escape. And then when he finally gets connected with Zod, he brings Zod to Superman. But what was his plan ultimately? Like if his plan was for them to take out Superman, what was his plan to take them out? Like what was he going to do with them? Still being ruling the world. Luthor wouldn't have been content with that. Luthor's so narcissistic and self-obsessed, he would not settle with being under the leadership or rule of a higher power. So like, what was his plan all along? And if his plan was for Superman to take them out, how is he going to take Superman out again? He no longer had kryptonite. So it's just like his plan wasn't very well flushed out. Like, what was his plan ultimately in doing this? And then we also have like Zod agreeing to make Luthor the ruler of Australia because that's what Luthor asked for. But then he's threatening to kill Luthor like every other scene. He's telling his little henchmen people to kill Luthor. So it's like, which is it going to be? Are you going to kill him? Are you going to make him the ruler? Are you going to give him what he wants? Like, what are we doing here? There's just a number of things like that in the script that were still not very well thought out. We're kind of weak and messy, quite a bit. Um, and yeah, just you could tell it had script issues. You can tell it had editing issues, but the characters still work. The story still works. I think the visual effects still hold up for 1977, I guess, was technically when they filmed the Donner cut of it. Um, so yeah, I still really enjoy this film. I do prefer the Donner cut over the Lester cut. I think they're the things that I care about are better executed and better handled, I would argue, in the Donner cut than the Lester cut. There you go. Overall, guys, my overall rating here for Donner cut of Superman 2 is 3.5 out of 5. It's not as good as the first one. Editing issues, script issues really kind of hold it back for me. But I still really love the story that they pursue. I love the characters and the performances, and I still have a really good time with it. So there you go, guys. Those are my thoughts on Superman 2. Again, the Richard Donner cut, not the Lester cut. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Which cut do you prefer? And yeah, we're going to keep just powering through the Superman movies each Monday until the new Superman is released. I'll give a review of that one and then throw in the Superman ranking at the very end. Hope you guys enjoy this video. And until next time, kick it and rock on.